Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below. The CEO's unconventional date, from invisible assistant to gala star. Eleanor, would you consider accompanying me to the annual charity ball? Alexander Sterling asked, leaving his assistant completely stunned. She stared at him in disbelief, adjusting her glasses as if she hadn't heard him correctly. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling, are you inviting me?" replied Eleanor Vance, the always efficient but seemingly invisible personal assistant to the tech magnate. "Yes, you. I don't have anyone to go with, and frankly, I prefer the company of someone with whom I can hold an intelligent conversation," he explained casually. Eleanor's eyes widened. The Grand Annual Charity Ball was the most exclusive event in London, where the elite of the business world gathered. "But sir, those kinds of events, I don't think I fit in there." She hesitated, unconsciously glancing at her simple attire. "Nonsense. You're worth more than all those show-offs combined," Alexander stated decisively. "Besides, you'd be doing me a huge favor. You know I detest these social obligations." The conversation was interrupted by Patrick Green, Alexander's best friend and business partner, who strode into the office without knocking. "Did you find a date for the ball yet? The press will be waiting to see who you arrive with," Patrick said, before noticing the tension in the room. "Am I interrupting something?" "I just asked Eleanor to accompany me," Alexander replied. Patrick's spontaneous laughter echoed in the office. "Is this a joke? Alexander, it's the event of the year. You could bring any supermodel or socialite, and you choose your assistant." He added a condescending glance at Eleanor. "No offense, Eleanor." Alexander's face hardened. "It's not a joke, and I'd appreciate it if you respected my decision." Patrick raised his hands in surrender, but his expression clearly showed what he thought. He left the office, muttering something about calling later. "You don't have to do it out of pity," Eleanor said once they were alone. "I perfectly understand my place." "It's not pity," Alexander insisted. "It's preference. After 5 years of working together, I think we deserve a night out of this office, don't you?" Eleanor couldn't help but smile slightly. Alexander Sterling, the genius behind quantum tech, one of the most important tech companies in the UK, rarely showed that more human side. Since his divorce 3 years prior, he had become a reserved man, completely focused on work. "I'll think about it, Mr. Sterling," she finally replied. "Alexander," he corrected. "If we're going to that ball together, I think we can be on a first-name basis, at least outside the office." "I'll think about it, Alexander," she said, feeling strange pronouncing his name. That same afternoon, as Eleanor organized the next day's agenda, she received a message from Beth, her best friend. "Is it true? You're going to the ball with Alexander Sterling? The whole office is talking about it." Eleanor sighed. Rumors flew faster than light at quantum tech. She responded with a curt, "I haven't accepted yet, and I'm still working." At the end of the day, when most employees had left, Eleanor entered Alexander's office to drop off some documents. She found him looking out the window at the sunset over London. "I've decided to accept your invitation," she announced, surprising herself with her boldness. Alexander turned with a genuine smile. "I'm glad to hear it. It'll be next Saturday. I'll send a car to pick you up." "I can get there on my own," she quickly said. "I insist. It's the least I can do." Eleanor nodded and headed for the door, but Alexander's voice stopped her. "Eleanor, thank you. It means a lot to me." She simply smiled and left, unaware that at that very moment, Vivian Chase, Alexander's ex-wife and a prominent figure in London's social circles, received a message with the news. Meanwhile, at an exclusive restaurant in Mayfair, Peter and George, supposed friends of Alexander, commented on the unexpected news. "The assistant? Are you serious?" Peter scoffed. "I have to see this. She'll probably show up in some cheap outfit and give us a spectacle to remember," George added, raising his glass. "I'll bet you £1,000 it'll be a social disaster." "Deal," Peter responded. though I almost feel sorry for Alexander. After Vivian, it seems he's lost all his style. What none of them knew was that this ball would change the course of many lives, especially Eleanor's, who that night in her small apartment in Camden looked at her wardrobe in a panic, wondering what she had gotten herself into. The doorbell of Beth's small apartment rang insistently. When she opened it, she found Eleanor with a desperate expression. "I need urgent help!" Eleanor exclaimed, storming in. "I agreed to go to the ball with Alexander, and now I don't know what to do. I have nothing suitable to wear." Beth, an emerging fashion designer, watched her friend with a growing smile. "Relax. This is exactly what I've been waiting years for," she said, taking her by the shoulders. "Finally, I can make the world see the real Eleanor Vance. I don't want to draw attention, Beth. I just want not to embarrass Alexander." Beth shook her head as she searched for her sketchbook. "That's your problem. You've always hidden. It's time to shine," she declared, sketching rapidly. "I have an incredible fabric I've been saving for a special occasion. Champagne color with gold details. It'll highlight your eyes and your skin. But I can't afford it. Who said anything about paying? It'll be my gift. Or rather, an investment. When everyone sees my design at the event of the year, my career will take off." Meanwhile, at the Quantum Tech office, Alexander faced the consequences of his decision. "So it's true. You're bringing your assistant to the ball?" asked Charles Price, one of the shareholders, with a mocking tone. "I thought it was just a rumor. Eleanor is more than my assistant. She's the most competent person I know," Alexander replied coldly. "Sure, very competent. And that's all you saw in her?" Charles insinuated with a malicious smile. Alexander visibly tensed. "Be careful what you imply, Charles. I won't tolerate disrespect towards us and any member of my team." The conversation was interrupted by a message on Alexander's phone. It was from Vivian, his ex-wife. "Seriously, Alexander, your assistant? I thought you had better taste. Everyone's commenting on your new strategy to keep staff happy." Alexander deleted the message in anger. His marriage to Vivian had been a monumental mistake, but she still held influence in the social circles that mattered for business. That afternoon, at the end of the day, Eleanor noticed several colleagues looking at her and whispering. Carol from the marketing department approached with false friendliness. "So you won over the boss, eh? Well played, Eleanor. Very well played." "It's not what you think," Eleanor replied, clenching her fists under the desk. "It's just a professional event." "Sure, professional. Anyway, enjoy your moment of fame. You never know how long it'll last," Carol said, walking away. With her morale plummeting, Eleanor entered Alexander's office to hand him the day's last reports. "I think we should cancel the ball," she blurted out without preamble. "People are talking too much, and it could affect your reputation." Alexander, who was reviewing some documents at Bois, looked up in surprise. "Since when do you care what people say? Since those comments can affect Quantum Tech. Your position as CEO." "My position is more than secure," he interrupted. "Or are you scared?" The question left Eleanor speechless for a moment. "It's not fear. It's common sense. I don't belong in that world, Alexander." He stood up and walked towards her with a serious expression. "Listen to me closely. We're not going as boss and assistant. We're going as two people who respect each other and who, frankly, are tired of the appearances of that world. If there's one thing I've learned over these years, it's that those people's opinions are worth less than the paper these reports are printed on." Eleanor felt a mix of admiration and gratitude at his words. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "Completely. It'll be our little rebellion," Alexander smiled. "You and I against all of them." 2 days later, an elegant package arrived at Eleanor's apartment. Opening it, she discovered a velvet case with a diamond necklace and earrings. The card simply read, "To compliment your attire, a small thank you for 5 years of loyalty. A.S." Eleanor gazed at the jewels in astonishment. She had never held anything so fine in her hands. Her first impulse was to return them, but she remembered Alexander's words about their little rebellion and smiled. That night, during the final dress fitting at Beth's house, Eleanor barely recognized herself in the mirror. "Is that me?" she asked incredulously, as Beth adjusted the last details. "This is you without barriers, without fear," Beth affirmed. "You've always been beautiful, Elle. You just hid behind those power suits and glasses. Do you think I should take off my glasses too? For the ball, definitely. You have beautiful eyes. We'll use makeup to highlight them." The night before the big event, Eleanor could barely sleep. She mentally reviewed the names of important guests, conversation topics, even etiquette rules she had frantically studied. Her phone vibrated with a message from Alexander. "Ready for our little revolution tomorrow?" She responded with a simple, "Ready," though her stomach was a knot of nerves. Miles away, in his luxurious penthouse, Alexander was also awake, gazing at the city's illuminated skyline. For the first time in years, he felt genuine anticipation for a social event. He wondered how Eleanor would look outside her usual formal office attire. More importantly, he wondered why it mattered so much to him. Are you on the edge of your seat? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. How do you think Eleanor's grand entrance will go? What kind of drama do you foresee? Tell me in the comments below. The grand reveal at the Savoy. Alexander checked his watch for the 5th time, waiting in the lobby of the Savoy Hotel. The ballroom on the top floor was already filled with guests, but he had insisted on waiting for Eleanor at the entrance. Dressed in an impeccable black tuxedo and bow tie, he commanded attention from passers-by. "Alexander Sterling waiting for someone. Now that's new," remarked Peter, who arrived with George. "Where's your famous date?" "She'll be here any moment," Alexander replied coldly. "Remember our bet," George whispered to Peter, not caring if Alexander overheard. £1,000, it'll be a disaster." Alexander was about to respond when he noticed both men staring towards the entrance with expressions of surprise. He turned slowly, and what he saw took his breath away. Eleanor advanced with natural elegance, wearing a spectacular champagne-colored gown with gold details that perfectly hugged her figure. The diamond necklace sparkled at her throat, and her hair, usually pulled back in an austere bun, fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Without her glasses, her stunning green eyes dominated a delicately made-up face. "Eleanor," Alexander murmured, unable to hide his astonishment. She smiled shyly as she approached. "Do I look so different?" "Different isn't the word," he replied, regaining his composure. "You look spectacular." Peter and George remained open-mouthed, unable to associate this elegant and beautiful woman with the discreet assistant they knew. "I think you owe me £1,000, Alexander said to George with a triumphant smile, before offering his arm to Eleanor. "Shall we go?" As they walked towards the elevators, Eleanor asked, "What was that about £1,000? "Nonsense between men," Alexander replied. "I'll tell you later." Upon entering the main ballroom, the effect was immediate. Conversations momentarily ceased, and dozens of gazes turned towards them. Alexander, accustomed to the attention, confidently guided Eleanor through the guests. "Everyone's staring at us," she whispered nervously. "They're staring at you," he corrected, "and they're right to." The first hour passed amidst formal greetings and superficial conversations. To Alexander's surprise, Eleanor handled each exchange with a natural grace he had never noticed in the office. Her intelligence, which he had always valued, shone in every conversation. "Your assistant is quite a surprise package," Patrick commented, approaching during a moment when Eleanor was chatting with other guests. "I never imagined this was hidden behind those boring suits." "There's a lot about Eleanor we don't know," Alexander replied, observing her with new admiration. The evening unfolded perfectly until Vivian Chase made her entrance, as elegant as ever, on the arm of a well-known entrepreneur. It didn't take long for her to spot Alexander and head towards him with a calculating smile. "Alexander, darling, "What a surprise to find you socializing," she said, with false sweetness, before examining Eleanor from head to toe. "And this must be your assistant." "It's Eleanor Vance," she introduced herself serenely. "The pleasure is mine, Ms. Chase." "Ms. Chase," Vivian corrected. "Alexander and I decided to go our separate ways some time ago. You know, I always admire those who ascend from such modest positions." The condescending tone was evident, but Eleanor maintained her composure. True modesty lies in recognizing the value of everyone, regardless of their position, she replied with a polite smile. Alexander stifled a smile, seeing Vivian's momentarily disconcerted expression. The orchestra began to play a waltz, and Alexander saw the perfect opportunity to withdraw. "If you'll excuse us, Vivian, I believe it's time to dance," he said, gently taking Eleanor's arm. On the dance floor, Eleanor seemed unsure. "I don't know how to waltz," she confessed in a low voice. "Just follow me," he replied, guiding her gently. "It's easier than it looks." Soon they found a natural rhythm, moving with elegance among the other couples. For a moment, the rest of the world seemed to disappear as they twirled to the music. "Thanks for rescuing me," Eleanor said. "I think you were defending yourself quite well," he replied with admiration. The magic of the moment broke when Vivian, from the edge of the dance floor, spoke louder than necessary. "Did you know Alexander has a weakness for rags to riches stories? His date used to wait tables in the university cafeteria while she studied. From serving trays to high society. How inspiring." An uncomfortable silence spread through the ballroom. Eleanor visibly tensed, and Alexander clenched his jaw with suppressed fury. To everyone's surprise, Eleanor gently pulled away from Alexander and walked towards Vivian with a firm step. "It's true," she said in a clear voice that everyone could hear. "I worked as a waitress to pay for my studies. I was also a cashier at a supermarket and gave private math lessons. I'm not ashamed of my past, Ms. Chase. On the contrary, I'm proud to have gotten here on my own merits." A murmur of approval swept through the room. Alexander approached, and to everyone's amazement, including Eleanor's, he took her hand before adding, "What few people know is that I also worked to pay for university," he revealed. "My first job was as a newspaper delivery boy. My second job was as an assistant in a mechanic's shop. Not all of us were born with a silver spoon, and those of us who have fought for our achievements know how to value them better." The silence that followed was broken by spontaneous applause. Vivian's face contorted into a grimace before she discreetly retreated. "I didn't know that about you," Eleanor whispered when they returned to the dance floor. "There's a lot you don't know about me," he replied with an enigmatic smile. "Just as there's a lot I didn't know about you until tonight." Their gazes met with a new intensity, while the photographers present immortalized the moment that tomorrow would be all over social media. The Monday following the ball, the atmosphere in the Quantum Tech offices was notably different. Eleanor, dressed in her usual gray power suit and glasses, felt the curious glances of her colleagues as she walked to her desk. "Good morning, Eleanor," Carol greeted her in an unusually friendly tone. "You were spectacular at the ball. The photos online don't do you justice." "Thanks, Carol," Eleanor replied curtly, turning on her computer. Minutes later, Alexander emerged from his office and stopped in front of Eleanor's desk. "Good morning," he said formally, though his eyes revealed a new complicity. "Could you come to my office? I need to discuss preparations for the meeting with the Japanese investors." Once inside, he closed the door, and his expression relaxed. "Surviving the day after?" he asked with a smile. "Barely," she admitted. "It seems I'm visible to everyone now. I told you would be. By the way, did you read the society column in the Times?" "I don't read those things," Eleanor responded. Comfortable. Alexander turned his monitor to show her an article titled, "The Cinderella of Silicon Roundabout." The main photo showed Eleanor and Alexander dancing, with an expression on their faces that seemed much more intimate than she remembered. "This is embarrassing," she murmured, adjusting her glasses. "I find it quite accurate," he commented. "The real news is that Beth, your friend, has received 3 offers to design dresses after it became known that she created yours." "That's wonderful," Eleanor exclaimed, genuinely happy. "She deserves it." "Now, about the Japanese," Alexander said, returning to professional mode. "I want you to come with me to the meeting, not as my assistant, but as part of the negotiating team." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. "But I've never participated in—" "Exactly. It's time you started. You're too intelligent to remain just my assistant." 2 weeks later, Eleanor accompanied Alexander to Edinburgh for the meeting with the Japanese investors. The negotiation was a success, largely thanks to a cultural detail Eleanor had researched that proved decisive. On the flight back, the atmosphere between them was relaxed and complicit. "We should celebrate," Alexander suggested. "I know a small restaurant in Soho that serves the best Italian food in the city." Dinner passed with laughter and conversations that had little to do with work. They discovered they shared a taste for the same music, historical documentaries, and had even read the same books. "It's funny," Eleanor commented as they walked after dinner. "We've worked together for 5 years, and we're only just now truly getting to know each other." "Offices aren't the best place for genuine connections," he replied, accidentally brushing her hand. "Sometimes we need to step outside our usual roles to see what's always been there." The fleeting touch sent an electric current through Eleanor's arm. Confused by these new sensations, she kept a certain distance the rest of the way. The next day, photos of their dinner appeared on a gossip blog. "Romance at Quantum Tech, Alexander Sterling and his assistant more than friends." "This has to stop," Eleanor said, showing the article to Alexander in his office. "They're distorting everything." "Does what they say matter so much to you?" he asked with an unreadable expression. "My professional reputation matters to me," she replied. "Everything I've achieved could be overshadowed by this?" Alexander nodded slowly. "I understand. We'll keep our relationship strictly professional in public." "In public and in private," Eleanor clarified firmly. "We're colleagues, Alexander. We can't let this become something it's not." He looked at her intensely before responding. "Are you sure it's nothing?" Before she could answer, Patrick burst into the office with a worried expression. "Alexander, we have a problem. Shares are plummeting. It seems there's a rumor about financial troubles at the company." What an intense turn of events. Will their connection survive this new challenge? And will Eleanor's career be impacted? Share your predictions in the comments below. The unveiling of treachery and a difficult choice. The Quantum Tech boardroom had become a crisis operations center. Graphs of falling shares covered the walls, and the management team wore worried expressions. "Losses already amount to 15% of the total value," Patrick reported, pointing to the main screen. "If this continues for another week, majority investors could demand changes in leadership." Alexander remained impassive, though Eleanor noticed how he subtly clenched his jaw, a gesture only she recognized as a sign of his internal tension. "Have we identified the source of the leak?" Alexander asked. "Not with certainty yet," replied David, head of cybersecurity, "but the rumors seem to originate from circles close to the board of directors." Everyone exchanged uncomfortable glances. The betrayal was coming from within. "I want you to review all confidential information accesses from the last 2 months," Alexander ordered. "And I need an effective communication plan by first thing tomorrow morning." When the meeting ended, Alexander asked Eleanor to stay. He waited for everyone to leave before speaking. "I need you to do something delicate," he said in a low voice. "Check Patrick's emails." Eleanor looked at him, surprised. "You suspect Patrick? He's been your friend since university." "That's exactly why I can ask you this," Alexander explained. "If he's innocent, no one will know. If he's involved, I need to be sure." "Alexander, this is—" "I know," he interrupted. "I wouldn't ask you if I had another option. I trust you more than anyone." That same afternoon, working discreetly with the IT team, Eleanor discovered a series of emails between Patrick and Vivian Chase. The suspicions were correct. Patrick was leaking information manipulated by Vivian, with a mix of professional promises and apparently something personal. With a heavy heart, Eleanor presented the evidence to Alexander in his office. "I'm sorry," she said, handing him the folder with the printouts. "You were right." Alexander reviewed the documents in silence, his expression hardening with each page. 13 years of friendship, he murmured finally, and he betrays me for her. The emails suggest Vivian promised him a position at Nexus Digital, Eleanor added, our direct competitor. Alexander closed the folder with a weary gesture. "I always knew he felt something for Vivian, even during our marriage. I never thought it would come to this." He stood up and looked out the window at the urban skyline of London, now illuminated by the sunset. "What will you do?" Eleanor asked, approaching. "What I must do," he replied. "Confront him, dismiss him, and proceed legally. The company comes first." "And your friendship?" "It died the moment he decided to betray me." Eleanor placed a hand on his shoulder in an instinctive gesture of comfort. Alexander turned, and for a moment, they were dangerously close. Their gazes met with an intensity neither tried to hide. "Eleanor, it's not the time," she interrupted, stepping back. "There's too much at stake." "There will always be something at stake," he replied. "The company, your career, my position. But there are things we can't keep ignoring." "Precisely why we need to be rational," Eleanor insisted. "Let's save quantum tech first. We'll talk about everything else later." Alexander nodded, respecting her decision. The following days were intense. Patrick was confronted with the evidence and, after a heated discussion, admitted his involvement. He was immediately dismissed, and legal action was initiated against both him and Vivian Chase for corporate espionage. The news shook the entire company, but the communication team handled the crisis masterfully, presenting it as a decisive internal cleanup. Gradually, shares began to stabilize. Alexander and Eleanor barely had time to rest, working almost 24 hours a day to regain investor confidence. Their professional synchronicity was perfect, complementing each other in every decision and strategy. One night, while reviewing the latest financial reports in Alexander's office, accumulated exhaustion led them to a more personal conversation. "You know what's ironic?" Alexander said, leaning back in his chair. "In the midst of this crisis, I've never felt more secure in my decisions, because I have you by my side." Eleanor looked up from the documents, surprised by the confession. "We work well together," she responded cautiously. "It's more than that, and you know it," he affirmed, holding her gaze. "What we have goes beyond professional, Eleanor. I think it's time to admit it." The silence that followed seemed to amplify the accelerated beat of Eleanor's heart. "Admitting it would complicate everything," she said finally. "What would happen to my position here, to everything I've worked to build? There's already enough gossip about us." "Is that what worries you, what others say?" "I'm worried about my professional career, Alexander. Everything I've worked so hard for." Alexander looked at her intensely. "No one who truly knows you would think that. The business world isn't fair, Alexander, especially with women." The tension between them was palpable. Finally, Alexander returned to his seat, respecting the space she needed. "What do you propose, then?" Eleanor breathed deeply before responding. "I think we need some distance, professionally. At least for a while." "What exactly does that mean?" "I'm going to request a transfer to the International Business Development Department," she explained. "It's an opportunity to grow professionally and to clarify what we feel without the daily pressure of working so closely." Alexander looked at her for a long moment, processing her words. "If that's what you really want, I won't object," he said finally. But I want you to know something. My feelings won't change, no matter what department you work in. The next day, Eleanor formally submitted her transfer request. In less than a week, it was approved, and she began her new position on the 15th floor, 2 floors below Alexander's office. The physical distance helped to quell the rumors, but it didn't diminish what they both felt. They saw each other in general meetings and occasionally crossed paths in the hallways, maintaining a professional cordiality that barely concealed the underlying tension. Quantum Tech slowly began to recover from the crisis. Shares climbed back up, and investor confidence was gradually restored. Eleanor's work in her new department was exceptional, quickly earning her the respect of her new team on her own merit. A month after her transfer, she received a job offer from a competing firm with a considerably higher salary. That night, as she contemplated the offer in her apartment, her phone rang. It was Alexander. "I heard about the offer," he said without preamble. "Are you going to accept it?" Eleanor sighed. News traveled fast in the corporate world. "I haven't decided yet," she responded sincerely. "I understand if you want to leave," he said with a restrained voice. "But I want you to know that Quantum Tech wouldn't be the same without you. I wouldn't be the same without you." The call ended shortly after, leaving Eleanor with more doubts than certainties. 6 months had passed since the financial crisis. Quantum Tech had not only recovered, but had emerged stronger, with new projects and a revamped corporate structure. The date coincidentally aligned with the anniversary of the famous ball that had changed so many lives. Eleanor, now Director of International Business Development, had rejected the competitor's offer and built her own team within Quantum Tech. Her office on the 15th floor reflected her new status, spacious, elegant, and with a view of the city. This morning, however, her mind wasn't on the contracts on her desk, but on the message she had received. Mandatory general meeting at 6:00 p.m. Corporate Terrace, AS. "Do you know what the meeting is about?" she asked Megan, her assistant, who entered with some documents. "They say it's something big," Megan replied enthusiastically. "The events team has been setting up the terrace since yesterday." At exactly 5:45 p.m., Eleanor went up to the building's terrace. She was surprised to find it completely transformed. Soft lighting, white and gold flowers, and a small stage with the orchestra she vividly remembered from the charity ball. Employees began to arrive, all equally confused and amazed by the decor. At exactly 6:00 p.m., Alexander appeared on stage, elegant in a navy blue suit. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Today we celebrate not only Quantum Tech's full recovery, but something much more important, the strength of teamwork and the integrity that defines our company." His gaze met Eleanor's in the crowd before he continued. "Exactly 1 year ago, I attended a ball that changed my perspective on many things. Today, I want to officially announce that Quantum Tech is entering a new era." He proceeded to explain the company's complete restructuring, including new social projects and a renewed commitment to diversity and inclusion. "And now I have a special surprise," he added. "I'd like to invite the person who made much of our recovery possible, our Director of International Development, Eleanor Vance, to the stage." Disconcerted, Eleanor walked towards the stage amidst applause. Alexander handed her a microphone. "Eleanor, could you share with everyone the details of the new Quantum Tech Scholarship Program for young people from vulnerable communities?" Eleanor looked at him, confused. "But that program hasn't been approved by the board yet." Alexander smiled. "It was approved this morning. All funds allocated, just as you proposed. Please, share your vision with the team." With growing confidence, Eleanor explained the program she had secretly designed for months. Full scholarships for low-income technology students, with guaranteed internships at Quantum Tech. This program will not only benefit these young people, but will bring fresh and diverse talent to our company, she concluded. True innovation comes from diversity of perspectives. The applause was enthusiastic. Alexander took back the microphone, thanking everyone and signaling the start of the celebration. The orchestra began to play while the employees enjoyed the party. As Eleanor tried to mingle with the crowd, she felt a hand on her arm. "Can we talk?" Alexander asked. Privately, he led her to a secluded section of the terrace, decorated exactly like the corner where they had shared their first dance a year ago. "How did you know about the program?" Eleanor asked. "It was confidential. Patrick told me," Alexander replied. "Patrick?" she exclaimed, surprised. "You talked to him after what he did?" "He came to see me a month ago. He apologized. He explained that Vivian had completely manipulated him. It doesn't justify his actions, but at least he had the courage to face me," Alexander explained. "During our conversation, he mentioned something interesting, that you rejected 3 job offers with better salaries in the last few months." Eleanor averted her gaze towards the city illuminated. "It's not all about money. He also told me you've been using part of your annual bonus to anonymously fund studies for young people from your old neighborhood. That was personal," she murmured. "Why would he tell you something like that?" "Because despite everything, he knows what I feel for you," Alexander replied simply. "And he wanted me to know who you really are. Although, are you ready to?" The silence between them was laden with contained emotions. The music softly reached their private corner. "Do you remember the last time we danced?" he asked, extending his hand. "How could I forget? Vivian almost ruined the night, and you saved it with your honesty." Alexander smiled. "Would you grant me this dance, Director Vance?" Eleanor accepted his hand, and they began to move to the rhythm of the music. "You know people will talk if they see us," she warned. "Let them talk. I don't care anymore." "Me neither," Eleanor admitted, surprising herself. "These months apart have taught me something important. I've managed to earn respect for my work, independently of you. I'm no longer afraid of what others think." Alexander stopped, looking at her with intensity. "I've missed you every day," he confessed. "Not just as my assistant, or as my colleague. I've missed you, Eleanor." "I've missed you too," she replied softly. "Then what's stopping us now?" "Nothing," Eleanor smiled. "Absolutely nothing." Alexander delicately took her face in his hands and kissed her under the starry London sky. While in the distance, Quantum Tech employees watched the scene with knowing smiles. "I have a proposal for you," Alexander said when they separated. "Not as your boss, but as the man who fell in love with the woman behind the efficient assistant." "I'm listening," she replied, her heart racing. "I want us to form a professional and personal partnership. Your intelligence and my vision. Your heart and my determination. Together, we could make Quantum Tech not just a successful company, but one that really impacts society positively." "Are you proposing a corporate merger or something more?" Eleanor joked. "Both," he smiled. "Let's start with the personal and let the professional take its natural course." "I accept the proposal," she responded, sealing the agreement with another kiss. At that moment, the music changed to the same waltz they had danced a year ago. Without words, they began to dance again. This time, without fear of the eyes watching them, without worrying about rumors or appearances. As they twirled under the stars, Alexander whispered, "I'll always be grateful that I mustered the courage to invite you to that ball." "And I'll always be grateful that I had the courage to accept," Eleanor replied, remembering the timid assistant she had been and marveling at the journey they had taken. From a distance, Quantum Tech employees gazed at the couple who had transformed the company, unaware that they were witnessing the beginning of a story that would leave a mark far beyond corporate limits. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. What an amazing journey for Eleanor and Alexander. Keep reading to see how their story continues. A legacy of love and innovation. A year later, the auditorium of London University was completely full. Students, professors, and prominent figures from the business world had gathered for the official inauguration of the Sterling Vance Foundation, a project that had generated expectations since its announcement. Eleanor, elegant in a cream-colored power suit, watched from the side of the stage as Alexander presented the foundation's mission. "Technology cannot continue to be a privilege," he declared with passion. "It must be a tool for social transformation, accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or economic situation." From her position, Eleanor couldn't help but feel proud. The last year had been a roller coaster of emotions and professional achievements. Her relationship with Alexander had flourished in parallel with their joint projects, demonstrating that love and work could coexist harmoniously when based on mutual respect. "And now," Alexander continued, "I'd like to invite the true architect of this foundation to the stage, my partner and companion, Eleanor Vance." Applause filled the auditorium as Eleanor walked onto the stage. Taking the microphone, she spotted a group of young people in the front row wearing T-shirts with the foundation's logo, the first 20 scholars of the program. "When I was a student at this very university," she began, "I worked as a waitress to pay for my studies. Many of my equally brilliant classmates had to drop out due to lack of resources. Today, with this foundation, we want to ensure that no talent is lost for economic reasons." Among the audience, Eleanor recognized Beth, now a renowned designer whose dress for that crucial night had launched her career. Patrick was also there, who, after a difficult process, had found redemption working for the foundation, using his contacts to open doors that benefited the students. At the end of the presentation, the first scholars went up to the stage. Among them stood out Emily, a 19-year-old young woman whose artificial intelligence project applied to preventive medicine had impressed the evaluation committee. "Emily reminds me a lot of you," Alexander whispered to Eleanor as they watched the young woman explain her project. "The same determination, the same sparkle in her eyes. But she'll have an easier path," Eleanor replied with satisfaction. After the official ceremony, during the reception, Beth approached the couple. "From invisible assistant to foundation director," she commented, hugging her friend. "Who would have imagined that night when you burst into my apartment in despair?" "All thanks to your magic dress," Eleanor joked. "It wasn't the dress," Alexander interjected. "The dress just showed what was always there." Patrick joined the conversation, still with some discomfort, but determined to mend the damage he had caused. "Investors are delighted with the initiative," he reported. 3 more want to join the mentoring program." Alexander nodded gratefully. His friendship with Patrick would never be the same, but both had found a new balance based on respect and redemption. When the guests began to leave, Alexander led Eleanor to the building's terrace. The sunset bathed the university campus in a golden light. "Remember that night on the Quantum Tech terrace?" he asked, embracing her from behind. "How could I forget?" Eleanor smiled. "The night we finally stopped pretending we were just colleagues." "I have something for you," Alexander said, handing her a small velvet box. "Another anniversary of that first time we danced." Inside was a delicate ring with a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "Alexander, this is—" "It's not a proposal," he clarified with a smile. "It's a promise that we'll continue building together, step by step." Eleanor turned to look at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I have something to tell you too," she said. "Something that will change our plans for the next year." Alexander looked at her expectantly. "I'm pregnant," Eleanor announced. "We're going to have a baby." Alexander's expression went from astonishment to pure happiness. He hugged her carefully as if she were suddenly something fragile and precious. "A family," he murmured against her hair. "Our own family." They stood there, embraced in silence, contemplating the skyline of the city where both had struggled, suffered, and finally found their way together. "You know what's the most incredible thing?" Eleanor reflected. "That it all began with an invitation to a ball, a simple decision that changed our lives." "The best decision I've ever made," Alexander responded. As the sun finally set, Eleanor thought about that insecure assistant, wearing glasses, who trembled at the idea of attending a high society event. How a dress, a dance, and the courage to be authentic had unleashed a transformation that went far beyond the personal. "Shall we dance?" Alexander asked, extending his hand as he had that first time. With no music but the wind through the campus trees, they danced slowly, celebrating not only their love, but the legacy they were building together. A legacy that, like their story, had begun with a dance step and now extended to future generations. From a distance, Emily and the other scholars watched the couple with admiration, unaware that they were witnessing not just a moment of love, but the living symbol that social barriers, prejudices, and appearances can be broken down when one has the courage to show who they truly are. The solitary billionaire and his assistant had definitively left everyone speechless.